There are girls he married secret, asking no permission to. For he knew he wouldn't get it if he did. There is gas and coals and victuals, and the house rent falling due. And it's more than rather likely there's a kid. There are girls he walked with casual, they'll be sorry now he's gone. For an absent-minded beggar they will find him. But it ain't the time for sermons with the winter coming on. We must help the girl that Tommy's left behind him. Cook's son, Duke's son, son of a belted earl, son of a Lambeth publican, it's all the same today. Each of 'em doing his country's work, and who's to look after the girls? Pass the hat for your credit's sake and pay. There are families by thousands, far too proud to beg or speak. And they'll put their sticks and bedding up the spout. And they'll live on half-o, nothing paid and punctual once a week. 'Cause the man that earned the wage is ordered out. He's an absent-minded beggar, but he heard his country call. And his regiment didn't need to send to find him. He chucked his job and joined it, so the job before us all is to help the home that Tommy's left behind him. Duke's job, cook's job, gardener, baronet, groom. Mews or palace or paper shop, there's someone gone away. Each of 'em doing his country's work, and who's to look after the room? Pass the hat for your credit's sake and pay. Let us manage so as later we can look him in the face and tell him what he'd very much prefer. That, while he saved the empire, his employer saved his place. And his mates, that's you and me, looked out for her. He's an absent-minded beggar, and he may forget it all. But we do not want his kiddies to remind him that we sent him to the workhouse while their daddy hammered Paul. So we'll help the home our Tommy's left behind him. Cook's home, Duke's home, home of a millionaire. 50,000 horse and foot going to Table Bay. Each of 'em doing his country's work, and what have you got to spare? Pass the hat for your credit's sake and pay. For the empire. Byfharald Williams. It is no more place and party. It is no more begging votes. But the roaring of steam packets, and a rushing of blue jackets, and a rally of redcoats. For the empire's will is hearty, thundered by united throats. We are sick of talk and treason. There is duty to be done by the veteran in danger, and the lad who is a stranger unto strife and shrinks from none. In the power of right and reason, now all classes are but one. We have suffered and have yielded, till we felt the burning shame, and long outrage and endurance are our glory of assurance. To begin the bloody game, by our honour are we shielded, in the might of England's name. It is no more fumefaction, it is no more weary calls. We are strong in faith and steady, with the sword of justice ready, and our iron men and walls, since the hour has struck for action, and red retribution falls. We have wrongs which for redressing cry aloud to God at last. It is woe to him who trifles, when we speak across our rifles, at the great and final cast, and we seek no other blessing than the blotting out the past. We will brook no new denial, we will have no second tale, and we seek no sordid laurels, but here fight the age's quarrels, and for freedom's broadening pale. Lo, an empire on its trial hangs within the awful scale. WANTD a CROMWLL. BYFHARALD Williams. Oh, for an hour of Cromwell's might, who raised an empire out of dust, and lifted it to noontide lights. by simple and heroic trust, whose word was like a swordsman's thrust, and clove its way through crown night. We want old England's iron stock, hewn of the same eternal rock. Where is the man of equal part, to rule by right divine of power, with statesman's head and soldier's heart, and all the age's dreadful dower, brought to a bright and perfect flower, from whom a nobler course may start? We hear but factions fume and cry, with England in her agony. Where is the master mind that reads the far-off issues of the day, and with a willing nation pleads, that loves to own a master's sway? Where are the landmarks on the way, set up alone by him who leads? We vainly ask a common creed, to make us one in England's need. Is there no man with broader reach, to fill a thorny throne of care, and bravely act and bravely teach, because in all he has a share? No helper who will do and dare, and stand a bulwark in the breach? Have we no Lord of England's fate, though coming from a cottage gate? Oh, surely somewhere is the hand, to grasp and guide this reeling realm, while in the hourglass sinks the sand, and faints the pilot at the helm. If billows break to overwhelm, yet he will conquer and command. England is waiting to be led. If through the dying and the dead, we do not seek the party fame that traffics in a people's fall, but one to shield our burning shame, and answer just his country's call, to weld us in a solid wall, and kindle with a common flame. Ah, when she finds the fitting man, England will do what England can. England's Ironsides, Byfharald Williams. They are not gone, the old Cromwellian breed, as witness conquered tides, and many a pasture sown with crimson seed. Our English Ironsides, and out on copies where the bullets rain, they serve their captain, slaying or are slain. The same grand spirit in the same grim stress arms them with stubborn mail. They see the light of duty's loveliness, and over death prevail. They never count the price or weigh the odds. The work is theirs, the victory is God's. They are not fled, the old Cromwellian stock, where stern the horseman rides, or stands the outpost like a lonely rock. Our English Ironsides, through drift and donga, up the fire-girt crag, they bear the honour of the ancient flag. What if they starve or on red pillows lie, beneath a burning sun? It is enough to live their day or die, ere it has even begun. They only ask what duty's voice would crave, and march right on to glory or the grave. The three Cheriestiones. Anonymous. Many years ago, 3 young gentlemen were lingering over their fruit and wine at a tavern, when a man of middle age entered the room, seated himself at a small unoccupied table, and calling the waiter, ordered a simple meal. His appearance was not such as to arrest attention. His hair was thin and grey, the expression of his countenance was sedate, with a slight touch perhaps of melancholy, and he wore a grey surtout with a standing collar, which manifestly had seen service, if the wearer had not. The stranger continued his meal in silence, without lifting his eyes from the table, until a cherry stone, sportively snapped from the thumb and finger of one of the gentlemen, struck him upon his right ear. His eye was instantly upon the aggressor, and his ready intelligence gathered from the ill-suppressed merriment of the party that this petty impertinence was intentional. The stranger stooped and picked up the cherry stone, and a scarcely perceptible smile passed over his features as he carefully wrapped it in a piece of paper and placed it in his pocket. This singular procedure upset the gravity of the young gentleman entirely, and a burst of laughter proceeded from the group. Unmoved by this rudeness, the stranger continued his frugal repast until another cherry stone from the same hand struck him upon the right elbow. This also, to the infinite amusement of the party, he picked from the floor and carefully deposited with the first. Amidst shouts of laughter, a third cherry stone was soon after discharged, and struck the stranger upon the left breast. This also he very deliberately deposited with the other two. As he rose and was engaged in paying for his repast, the gaiety of these sporting gentlemen became slightly subdued. Having discharged his reckoning, he walked to the table at which the young men were sitting, and with that air of dignified calmness which is 1,000 times more terrible than wrath, drew a card from his pocket, and presented it with perfect civility to the offender, who could do no other than offer his in return. While the stranger unclosed his surtout to take the card from his pocket, he displayed the undress coat of a military man. The card disclosed his rank, and a brief inquiry at the bar was sufficient for the rest. He was a captain whom ill health and long service had entitled to half pay. In earlier life he had been engaged in several affairs of honour, and in the dialect of the fancy, was a dead shot. The next morning a note arrived at the aggressor's residence, containing a challenge in form and one of the cherry stones. The truth then flashed before the challenged party. It was the challenger's intention to make 3 bites at this cherry, 3 separate affairs out of this unwarrantable frolic. The challenge was accepted, and the challenged party, in deference to the challenger's reputed skill with the pistol, had half decided upon the small sword. But his friends, who were on the alert, soon discovered that the captain, who had risen by his merit, had in the earlier days of his necessity gained his bread as an accomplished instructor in the use of that weapon. They met and fired alternately by lot. The young man had selected this mode, thinking he might win the first fire. He did, fired and missed his opponent. The captain levelled his pistol and fired. The ball passed through the flap of the right ear, and as the wounded man involuntarily put his hand to the place, he remembered that it was the right ear of his antagonist that the first cherry stone had struck. Here ended the first lesson. A month passed. His friends cherished the hope that he would hear nothing more from the captain when another note, a challenge of course, and another cherry stone arrived with an apology on the score of ill health for delay. Again they met, fired simultaneously, and the captain, who was unhurt, shattered the right elbow of his antagonist, the very point upon which he had been struck with the second cherry stone, and here ended the second lesson. There was something awfully impressive in the modus operandi and exquisite skill of his antagonist. The third cherry stone was still in his possession, and the aggressor had not forgotten that it had struck the unoffending gentleman upon the left breast. A month passed, another, and another of terrible suspense, but nothing was heard from the captain. At length the gentleman who had been his second in the former duels once more presented himself, and tendered another note, which, as the recipient perceived on taking it, contained the last of the cherry stones. The note was superscribed in the captain's well-known hand, but it was the writing evidently of one who wrote feebly. There was an unusual solemnity also in the manner of him who delivered it. The seal was broken, and there was the cherry stone in a blank envelope. "And what, sir, am I to understand by this?" inquired the aggressor. "You will understand, sir, that my friend forgives you. He is dead." The Midshipman's Funeral, by Barley Dales. Years ago, when I was quite a young man, I was appointed chaplain to HMS Octopus, then on guard at Gibraltar. We had a very nice time of it, for Gib is a very gay place, and that winter there was plenty of fun somewhere nearly every night, and we were asked to most of the festivities. Now, on board the Octopus was a young midshipman, whom I will call Munro. He was a handsome young fellow, but rather delicate, and he had been sent to Gibraltar for the sake of the climate, in hopes that the sea air and warm winter might set him up. He was the life of the ship, and wherever he went he was popular, and it is possible he might have outgrown his weakness, for I don't think there was any organic disease at this time, but he got a low fever and died in a week. This low fever was very prevalent, and at the same time that poor young Munro died, an admiral, one of the leading members of society at Gib, died of the same disease. As it was considered infectious, the 2 bodies were placed in their coffins and carried to the mortuary till the funeral. Oddly enough, both funerals were fixed for the same day, Munro's in the morning and the Admiral's in the afternoon. The Admiral's was to be a very grand affair. All the troops in the garrison were to follow, as well as the naval officers and sailors on board the guardships. The ceremony was to be performed by the bishop, assisted by some other clergy, while as for poor Munro, I was to bury him at 10 o'clock in the morning. 6 men were told off to carry the coffin, and it was left to those who liked to act as mourners. Well, the day of the funerals arrived. All the ships were decked with flags half-mast high in honor of the admiral, minute guns were fired in honor of the admiral, church bells tolled in honor of the admiral, while as for poor Munro, one or two of us excepted, no one thought of him. 10 o'clock came, and I with the doctor and all of Munro's comrades, another middy and the 6 sailors, who, by the way, had all volunteered their services, set out for the mortuary. I had a fancy to follow the poor fellow as far as I could, so I waited while the Jack Tars went inside and fetched out the coffin covered with the Union Jack, and Munro's hat and sword on the top, and then the little procession took its way across the neutral ground to the English cemetery. I followed the coffin, and the other 2 brought up the rear. The sentries did not salute us as we passed them. At last we reached the cemetery gates. Here I was obliged to relegate my post of chief mourner to the doctor, while I went into the chapel, put on my surplice, and went to the door to meet the body. I then proceeded to bury the poor boy, and when the Union Jack was taken off and the coffin lowered into the grave, I leant over to take one last look. The doctor did the same, and as our eyes met, the same emotion caused us both to blow our noses violently, and it was in a voice of suppressed emotion that I concluded the service. I was so disgusted with the way in which the poor boy had been slighted that I had not intended going to the Admiral's funeral, but after burying Munro, I felt more charitably disposed, so I got into my uniform and duly attended the Admiral's obsequies. It was a very grand affair indeed. The streets were thronged with spectators, every window was filled with eager faces as the enormous procession passed by. There were 5 regiments stationed in Gibraltar at the time, and 2 men of war besides the Octopus lying in the harbour. Detachments from every regiment were sent, 3 military bands followed, a battery of artillery, the Marines and all the Jack Tars in the place. The governor and his staff were there, and every officer who was not on the sick list, quartered in Gibraltar, was present. A firing party was told off to fire over the grave when all was over, and this brilliant procession was met at the cemetery gates by the bishop, attended by several clergymen and a surpliced choir. I forgot to say that a string of carriages followed the troops, and the entire procession could not have been much less than a mile long. As we crossed the neutral ground this time, the sentry with arms reversed saluted us, and the strains of Beethoven's Funeral March of a Hero must have been heard all over Gibraltar as the 3 bands, one in front, one in the rear and one in the centre, all pealed it forth. Of course not 1/3 of the funeral cortege could get near the grave, but I managed to get pretty close. The service proceeded, and at length the coffin was uncovered to be lowered into the grave. It was smothered with flowers, but the wreaths were all carefully removed, and the Admiral's cocked hat and sword, and then the Union Jack was off, and the bishop, the governor, and all the officers near the grave pressed forward to look at the coffin. They looked once, they started, they looked again, they frowned, they rubbed their eyes, they looked again, then they whispered, they sniffed, they snorted, they grumbled. They gave hurried orders to the sextons, who shovelled some earth onto the coffin, and the bishop hurriedly finished the service. What do you think they saw when they looked into the grave? Why, poor Munro's coffin. I buried the Admiral myself in the morning by mistake. The doctor and I found it out at the grave, but we kept our own counsel. Young England. Ladysmith. Byfharald Williams. I, Ladysmith, occupied. Flushed with fight and red with glory. Conquerors if backward flung. Fresh from triumphs grim and gory. Toward the goal the army swung. Splendid but with recent laurels. Dimmed by shadow of defeat. Thirsting yet for nobler quarrels. Never dreaming of retreat. Day by day they grimly struggled. Early on and on till late. Night by night with doom they juggled. Dodging death and fighting fate. Not a murmur once was spoken. Stern endurance still unspent. As with spirit all unbroken. On the bitter march they went. Still with weary steps that stumbled. Forward moved that constant tread. Sleepless, silent and unhumbled. On and on the army sped. Noble sons of noble mothers. Proud of home and kin and kith. Brothers to the aid of brothers. On and on to Ladysmith. There through smoke of onset rifted. Soldiers who disdained to yield. Had for weal or woe uplifted England's own broad battle shield. Right across the path of pillage was that iron rampart thrust, while beneath it town and village, safely hid in settled trust. Frail and open seemed that shelter, and unguarded to the foes, helpless as the fiery welter rocked it in volcanic throes. But there was defense to bind it with the force of destiny, and an empire stood behind it, armed in awful majesty, and no fortress ever molded girt securer chosen space than those unseen walls which folded in their fear that lonely place. On its outposts far the scourges fell with wrath and crimson rain, but the fierce assaulting surges beat and beat in thunder vain. Chapter 2. Ladysmith besieged. There they kept the old flag flying, day by day, and prayed relief. Weary, wounded, doomed and dying, gallant men and noble chief, by the leaden tempest stricken, grandly stood or grandly fell. Peril had but power to quicken faith that owned such holy spell. Not alone the foe without them menaced them with fire and shot, sickness creeping round about them, fever, dysentery and rot, struck the rider and the stallion, making merry as at feast. On the pick of each battalion, ruthless, smiting man and beast, none were spared and nothing holy, for the fever claimed the best, now the high and now the lowly, now the baby at the breast. All obeyed its mandate, drooping in the fullness of their power, old and young before it stooping, bud and blossom, fruit and flower. Hunger blanched their dauntless faces, furrowed with the lines of lack, but with stern and stubborn paces, still they drove the spoiler back. Round them drew the iron tether, tighter, but they kept their troth, all for England's sake together, soldier and civilian both. Death and ruin knock and enter, hearts may break and homesteads burn, yet from that lone faithful centre flashed red vengeance in return. Guardian guns thence hurled defiance from the brave who lightly took all their blows in brave reliance, which no tempest ever shook. Hand to hand they strove and wrestled stoutly for that pearl of pride, where mid flame and woe it nestled, down with danger at its side. Yet like boys released from class time, though the blast destroying blew, there they played and found a pastime, while the flag unconquered flew. Chapter 3. Ladysmith relieved. Then when all seemed lost but glory, with the lustre which it gave, and relief an idle story, murmured by a sealed grave, while with pallid lips they reckoned darkly the enduring days, famished low deliverance beckoned, surely after long delays. Wave on wave of martial beauty dashed upon those deadly rocks at the simple call of duty, and were broken by the shocks. Yet that chivalry of splendor, though baptized in blood and fire, had no thought of mean surrender, never breathed the word retire. Still they weighed the dreadful chances, still they gathered up their strength by invincible advances, steeled to win the prize at length. Fate like their resolve to sever those gaunt bonds of grim despair, and within the breach forever England's honour to repair. Came relief at last, endeavour, stern, magnificent and true, hoping on and fighting ever forced its gory passage through. All the rage of pent-up forces, all the passion seeking vent, out of vast and solemn sources, here renewed their sacrament, in the rapture of a greeting, for which thousands fought and bled, with the saved and Saviour's meeting, over our imperial dead, witnesses unseen but tested, lived again as grander men, and their awful shadow rested, with a benediction then, one who with his wondrous talent conquered more than even the sword, and among the gay and gallant, by his pen was crowned Lord. There they lie in silence lowly, which no battle now can wake, and the ground is ever holy, for our English heroes' sake. The 6-inch gun. From the Christmas number of the Bombshell, published in Ladysmith during the siege. There is a famous hill looks down, 5 miles away on Ladysmith town, with a long flat ridge that meets the sky, almost 1,000 feet on high, and on the ridge there is mounted one long-range terrible 6-inch gun, and down in the street a bugle is blown, when the cloud of smoke on the sky is thrown, for it's 60 seconds before the roar reverberates o'er and a second more, till the shell comes down with a whiz and stun, from that long-range terrible 6-inch gun, and men and women walk up and down the long hot streets of Ladysmith town, and the housewives walk in the usual round, and the children play till the warning sound. Then into their holes they scurry and run, from the whistling shell of the 6-inch gun, for the shells they weigh 100 pound, bursting wherever they strike the ground, while the strong concussion shakes the air, and shatters the window panes everywhere. And we may laugh, but there's little of fun in the bursting shell from a 6-inch gun. Oh, 'twas whistle and jest with the carbineers gay, as they cleaned their steeds at break of day. But like a thunderclap there fell, in the midst of the horses and men, a shell, and the sight we saw was a fearful one. After that shell from the 6-inch gun, though the foe may beset us on every side, we'll furnish some cheer in this Christmastide. We will laugh and be gay, but a tear will be shed, and a thought be given to the gallant dead, cut off in the midst of their life and fun, by the long-range terrible 6-inch gun. SDPATRIC Case Day. BYFHARALD Williams. Here's to the Isle of the Shamrock. Here's a good English hurrah. Luck to the Celt upon Copy or Velt. Erin Mavernine Garbrog. The shamrock, the rose and the thistle. The shamrock, the rose and the leek. One where the bayonets bristle. One when there's duty to seek. Each has a need of each other, linked on the shore and the wave, all for the sake of one mother. Honour the brave. Here's to the boys of the shamrock. Here's to the gallant and gay, bearing the flag upon donga or crag, blithely as children at play. The shamrock, the leek and the thistle. The shamrock, the leek and the rose. One though the bullets may whistle, one in a red grave's repose. Each has a need of his fellows, sharing the glory or grave. Each the same destiny mellows. Honour the brave. Here's to the girls of the shamrock. Here's to the glamour and grace, laughing on all in hovel and hole, ever from Erin's young face. The shamrock, the rose and the thistle. The shamrock, the rose and the leek. One in the face of a missile. One when the batteries speak. Each of himself is delighted to succour the serf or the slave, and who can deny them united? Honor the brave. Here's to the wit of the shamrock. Here's to the favored and free, giving a store of that magical lore, learnt but at nature's own knee. The shamrock, the leek, and the thistle, the shamrock, the leek, and the rose, one when fame writes her epistle, one where dread dangers enclose. Each for the others asks only, ever to succor and save. Each without all must be lonely. Honor the brave. Here's to the day of the shamrock. Here's to the emblem of youth. Wear it we will on our bosoms and still, deeper in heart and in truth. The shamrock, the rose, and the thistle, the shamrock, the rose, and the leek, one where grim batteries bristle, one when there's pleasure to seek. Each on each other relying, trusts nor for better would rave, each for all living and dying. Honor the brave. Here's to the reign of the shamrock. Here's to the welfare of all, bearing its light through the feast and the fight, ever at liberty's call. The shamrock, the leek, and the thistle, the shamrock, the leek, and the rose, one where the death arrows whistle, one where hilarity flows. Each from the bog or the heather gives all a brother may crave. Ploughland and city together, honor the brave. This hero of Omdurman, Major General H. A. MacDonald, C.B., D.S.O. told in the ranks. Byfharald Williams. There were lots of lies and tattle, in dispatches and on wire, but 'twas Mac who saved the battle. When the word came to retire, I'll no do it, he cried ready, for what peril lay in store, with his ranks like steel and steady, and I'll see them hanged before. Oh, we maun just fight, and bolder, slewed his front the dervish way, smart with shoulder knit to shoulder, white and black that bloody day. Then a hell of fire and sputtered, iron blast and leaden hail, while the Maxims stormed and stuttered, and our rifles did not fail. For the destiny of nations, with an agony intense, and our empire's own foundations, hung a minute in suspense. But old Mac was cool as ever, and his words like leaping flame flashed in confident endeavour to avert that evil shame. Swung his lines on hinges, rolling right and left like very doom, till our fate nigh past controlling break in glory out of gloom. While upon those awful stages throbbed a world's great piston beat, and the moments seemed as ages, wrung from death and red defeat. Ah, we lived indeed, and no man recked of wound or any ill, as we grimly faced the foeman. If we died to conquer still, and it felt as though the burden of all England gave us might, laid on each who asked no guerdon, but against those odds to fight. Let the lucky get high stations, and the honour which he won. Mac desires no decorations, but the gallant service done. For the rankers bear the losses, and the brunt of every toil, while they earn for others crosses, and the splendour and the spoil. Boot and saddle. Byfharald Williams. A true incident in the Matabele campaign, 1893. Mashingumbis was the rat hole, which we had to draw ere day, heedless whether this or that hole, if we only found a way, up among the iron furrows of the rocks where hid in burrows, safe the rats in shelter lay. No misgiving, not a fear. Nor was I the last astraddle, nor the hindmost in the rear. When the bugle sounded clear, boot and saddle, right away went men and horses, both as eager for the fun, through the drifts and dried-up courses, where like mad the waters run, after storms or through the winters, mashing all they meet to splinters, ready hand and sword and gun. Every eye was keen to mark, and the tongue alone seemed idle, every ear alert to hark, as we scanned each crevice dark, bit and bridle, here and there the startled chirrup of strange creatures as we go, standing sometimes in the stirrup, just to get a bigger show, till we gain our point, the entry. There the pass, no sign of sentry, not a sound above, below. Clear the coast the savage gave, never hint to south or norward. Was he napping in his cave, with that quiet like the grave? Steady forward. Further in, the rats were sleeping. We would grimly smoke them out, with a dose of lead for keeping, and a fence of flame about. They might wake perhaps from shelter, at our bullets' ghastly pelter, to the brief and bloody rout. But next moment we were wrapped, down to saddle girth and leather, in the fire of foes unmapped. We were turned and fairly trapped. Keep together. On they poured in thousands, hurling steel that stabbed and belching bowl, from a host of rifles curling serpentwise around us all. Front and flank and rear they tumbled, nearer, darker as we fumbled, till we heard the captain's call, each man for himself and back. So we rushed those rocky mazes, with that torrent grim and black, dealing ruin in our track, death and blazes. Oh, that bullet, how it shattered vein and tissue to the bone, dropped me faint and blood bespattered, helpless on a bed of stone, while the mare which oft had eaten from my hand, caressed unbeaten, left her master doomed alone. Limply then I lay in dread, racked with torture, sick and under, hearing as through vapours red, and with reeling heart and head, hoofs of thunder. Was I dreaming by the boulder, where I huddled as I fell, stood the steed beside my shoulder, faithful, fain to serve me well, whinnying softly then to screen me from the foe. She knelt between me and that circling human hell. Tenderly she touched my face, with the nose that knew my petting, ripe for the last glorious race, and her comrade's own embrace, unforgetting. Oh, her haunches heaved and quivered, with the passion freely brought, for the life to be delivered, though she first with demons fought, while her large eyes gleamed and glistened, and her ears down pointing listened, waiting for the answer sought, till a sudden wave of might set me once again astraddle, on the seat of saving flight, plucked from very jaws of night, boot and saddle, the midnight charge. B.Y. Clement Scott. Pass the word to the boys tonight, lying about midst dying and dead. Whisper it low, make ready to fight, stand like men at your horses' head. Look to your stirrups and swords, my lads, and into your saddles, your pistols thrust. Then setting your teeth as your fathers did, you'll make the enemy bite the dust. What did they call us boys at home? Feather-bed soldiers. Faith, it's true. Kept to be seen in Her Majesty's parks, and mightily smart at a grand review. Featherbed soldiers hang their chaff where in the world I should like to know. When a war broke out and the country cold was an English soldier sorry to go. Brothers in arms and brothers in heart, cavalry, infantry there and then. No matter what careless lives they lived, they were ready to die like Englishmen. So pass the word, in the sultry night. Stand to your saddles, make ready to fight. We are sick to death of the scorching sun, and the desert stretching for miles away. We are all of us longing to get at the foe, and sweep the sand with our swords today. Our horses look with piteous eyes, they have little to eat and nothing to do. And the land around is horribly white, and the sky above is terribly blues. But it's over now, so the colonel says. He is ready to start, we are ready to go. And the cavalry boys will be led by men, Ewart and Russell and Drury Low. Just once again let me stroke the mane, let me kiss the neck and feel the breath of the good little horse who will carry me on to the end of the battle, to life or death. Give us a grip of your fist, old man, let us all keep close when the charge begins. God is watching o'er those at home, God have mercy on all our sins. So pass the word in the dark, and then, when the bugle sounds, let us mount like men. Out we went in the dead of the night, away to the desert across the sand. Guided alone by the stars of heaven, a speechless host, a ghostly band. No cheery voice the silence broke, forbidden to speak we could hear no sound. But the whispered words, be firm my boys, and the horses' hoofs on the sandy ground. What were we thinking of then? Look here, if this is the last true word I speak. I felt a lump in my throat, just here, and a tear came trickling down my cheek. If a man dares say that I funked, he lies, but a man is a man though he gives his life for his country's cause as a soldier should. He has still got a heart for his child and wife. But I still rode on in a kind of dream. I was thinking of home and the boys, and then the silence broke and a bugle blew, then a voice rang cheerily. Charge, my men. So pass the word in the thick of the fight, for England's honour and England's right. What is it like, a cavalry charge in the dead of night? I can scarcely tell. For when it is over it's like a dream, and when you are in it a kind of hell. I should like you to see the officers lead, forgetting their swag and Bond Street air, like brothers and men at the head of the troop, while bugles echo and troopers dare. With a rush we are in it and hard at work, there's scarcely a minute to think or pause. For right and left we are fighting hard for the regiment's honour and country's cause. Featherbed warriors, on my life, be they lifeguards red or horse guards blue. They haven't lost much of the pluck, my boys, that their fathers showed us at Waterloo. It isn't for us, who are soldiers bred, to chatter of wars, be they wrong or right. We've to keep the oath that we gave our Queen, and when we are in it we've got to fight. So pass the word without any noise. Bravo cavalry, well done boys. Pass the word to the boys tonight, now that the battle is fairly won. A message has come from the Empress Queen, just what we wanted. A brief well done. The sword and stirrup are sorely stained, and the pistol barrels are empty quite. And the poor old charger's piteous eyes bear evidence clear of the desperate fight. there's many a wound and many a gash, and the sunburned face is scarred and red. There's many a trooper safe and sound, and many a tear for the pal who's dead. I care so little for rights and wrongs of a terrible war, but the world at large, it knows so well when duty's done, it will think sometimes of our cavalry charge. Brothers in arms and brothers in heart, we have solemnly taken an oath, and then, in all the battles throughout the world, we have followed our fathers like Englishmen. So pass this blessing the lips between. 'Tis the soldier's oath, God save the Queen. Mafking ADSUM BY Rev AFREWNAYLWARD. At the evening roll call at the Charterhouse School, where Baden-Powell was educated, it is customary for the boys to respond to the call of their names by saying "Adsum, I'm here." Oft as the shades of evening fell, in the schoolboy days of old, the form work done or the game played well, clanging aloft the old school bell uttered its summons bold, and a bright lad answered the roll call clear. "Adsum, I'm here." A foe-girt town and a captain true, out on the Afric plain, high overhead his queen's flag flew. But foes were many and friends but few. Who shall guard that flag from stain? And calm mid confusion a voice rang clear. "Adsum, I'm here." The slow weeks passed and no succor came. Famine and death were rife. Yet still that banner of deathless fame floated unsullied by fear or shame over the scene of strife. And the voice, though weaker, was full of cheer. "Adsum, I'm here." Heaven send that when many a heart's dismayed, in dark days yet in store, should foemen gather or faith betrayed, the country call for a strong man's aid, as she never called before. A voice like his may make answer clear, banishing panic and calming fear. "Adsum, I'm here." The fight 80 RORK East Drift, January 23, 1879. BYEMILYPFERFFER. It was over at Issinjula, the bloody work was done, and the yet unburied dead looked up unblinking at the sun. 800 men of Britain's best had signed with blood the story, which England leaves to time, and lay there scanted e'en of glory. Stuart Smith lay smiling by the gun he spiked before he died. But gallant Gardner lived to write a warning and to ride a race for England's honour and to cross the Buffalo, to bid them at Rorke's Drift expect the coming of the foe. That band of lusty British lads camped in the hostile land rose up upon the wood with Chard and Bromhead to command. An hour upon the foe that hardy race had barely won, but in it all that men could do those British lads had done. And when the Zulus on the hill appeared, a dusky host, they found our gallant English boys, pale faces at their post. But paler faces were behind, within the barricade, the faces of the sick who rose to give their watchers aid. 5 men to 1 the first dark wave of battle brought, it bore down swiftly, while our youngsters waited steadfast as the shore. Behind the slender barricade, half hidden on their knees, they marked the stealthy current glide beneath the orchard trees. Then forth the volley blazed, then rose the deadly reek of war. The dusky ranks were thinned, the chieftain slain by young Dunbar rolled headlong and their phalanx broke, but formed as soon as broke. And with a yell the furies that avenge man's blood awoke. The swarthy wave sped on and on, pressed forward by the tide, which rose above the bleak hilltop, and swept the bleak hillside. It rose upon the hill, and surging out about its base, closed house and barricade within its murderous embrace. With savage faces girt, the lads' frail fortress seemed to be an island all abloom within a black and howling sea. and only that the savages shot wide and held the noise. As deadly as the bullets, they had overwhelmed the boys. Then in the dusk of day the dusky Kaffirs crept about the bushes and the prairie grass, to rise up with a shout, to step as in a war dance all together, and to fling their weight against the sick house till they made its timbers spring. When beaten back, they struck their shields and thought to strike with fear those British hearts. Their answer came a ringing British cheer, and the volley we sent after showed the Kaffirs to their cost. The coolness of our temper, scarce an ounce of shot was lost, and the sick men from their vantage at the windows singled out from among the valiant savages the bravest of the rout. A pile of 14 warriors lay dead upon the ground by the hand of Joseph Williams, and there led up to the mound a path of Zulu bodies on the Welshman's line of fire. Ere he perished, dragged out, assegaied and trampled in their ire. But the body takes its honour or dishonour from the soul, and his name is writ in fire upon our nation's long bedroll. Yet let no name of any man be set above the rest, where all were braver than the brave, each better than the best, where the sick rose up as heroes, and the sound had hearts for those who, in madness of their fever, were contending as with foes. For the hospital was blazing, roof and wall, and in its light the Kaffirs showed like devils, till so deadly grew the fight that they cowered into cover, and one moment all was still, when a Kaffir chieftain bellowed forth new orders from the hill. Then the Zulu warriors rallied, formed again, and hand to hand we fought above the barricade. Determined was the stand. Our fellows backed each other up, no wavering and no haste, but loading in the Kaffirs' teeth, and not a shot to waste. We had held on through the dusk, and we had held on in the light of the burning house, and later in the dimness of the night. They could see our fairer faces, we could find them by their cries, by the flash of savage weapons and the glare of savage eyes. With the midnight came a change, that angry sea at length was cowed. Its waves still broke upon us, but fell fainter and less loud. When the pale face of the dawn rose glimmering from his bed, the last black sullen wave swept off and bore away the dead. That island all abloom with English youth and fortified with English valour stood above the wild retreating tide. Those lads contemned Canute, and shamed the lesson that he read. For them the hungry waves withdrew, the howling ocean fled. Britannia, rule Britannia, while thy sons resemble thee, and our islanders, true islanders wherever they may be. Island fortified like this, manned with islanders like these, will keep thee lady of thy land, and sovereign of all seas. Relieved, atmafiking, said he of the relieving force, as through the town he sped. Art thou in Baden-Powell's horse? The trooper shook his head, then drew his hand his mouth across, like one who's lately fed. Alas for Baden-Powell's horse! It's now in me, he said, daily express how Sam Hodge won the Victoria Cross. B.Y. William JFFREY PROWSC. Just a simple little story I've a fancy for inditing. It shows the funny quarters in which chivalry may lodge. A story about Africa and Englishmen and fighting, and an unromantic hero by the name of Samuel Hodge. Samuel Hodge, the words in question never previously filled a conspicuous place in fiction or the chronicles of fame, and the blood and culture critics, or the Rosa and Matilda school of novelists would shudder at the mention of the name. It was up the Gambia River, and of that unpleasant station. It is chiefly in connection with the fever that we hear, that my hero with the vulgar and prosaic appellation was a private mind, a private, and a sturdy pioneer. It's a dreary kind of region, where the river mists are rising, roll slowly out to seaward, dropping poison in their track. And accordingly few gentlemen will find the fact surprising that a rather small proportion of our garrison comes back. It is filthy, it is fetid, it is sordid, it is squalid. If you tried it for a season, you would very soon repent. But the British trader likes it, and he finds a reason solid for the liking in his profit at the rate of cent per cent. And to guard the British traders, gallant men and merry younkers, in their coats of blue and scarlet, still are stationed at the post, whilst the migratory natives, who are known as tilly bunkers, grub up and down for groundnuts and chafffer on the coast. Furthermore, to help the trader in his laudable vocation, we have heaps of little treaties with a host of little kings, and at times the coloured caitiffs in their wild inebriation gather round us little hornets with uncomfortable stings. To my tale, the King of Barra had been getting rather saucy. In fact, for such an insect, he was coming it too strong. So we sent a small detachment, it was led by Colonel 500 RC, to drive him from his capital of Tubabe Kalong. Now on due investigation, when his land they had invaded, they learnt from information which was brought them by the guides that the worthy King of Barra had completely barricaded the spacious mud construction where His Majesty resides. At it, boys, said Colonel 500 RC, and himself was first to enter, and his fellows tried to follow with the customary cheers. Through the town he dashed impatient, but had scarcely reached the centre ere he found the task before him was a task for pioneers. For so strongly and so stoutly all the gates were palisaded, the supports could never enter if he did not clear a way. But Sammy Hodge, perceiving how the foe might be persuaded, had certain special talents which he hastened to display. Whilst the bullets then were flying and the bayonets were glancing, whilst the whole affair in fury rather heightened than relaxed, with axe in hand and silently our pioneer advancing, smote the gate and bade it open, and it did as it was axed. L'envoy. Just a word of explanation, it may save us from a quarrel. I have really no intention, 'twould be shameful if I had, of preaching you a blatant, democratic kind of moral. For the swell, you know, the 500 RC, fought as bravely as the cad. Yet I own that sometimes thinking how a courteous decoration may be won by shabby service or disreputable dodge, I regard with more than pleasure, with a sense of consolation, the Victoria Cross for valour on the breast of Sammy Hodge, the relief of Lucknow, October 25, 1857, by R.T.S. Lowell. Oh, that last day in Lucknow fort! We knew that it was the last, that the enemy's minds had crept surely in, and the end was coming fast. To yield to that foe meant worse than death, and the men and we all worked on. It was one day more of smoke and roar, and then it would all be done. There was one of us, a corporal's wife, a fair young gentle thing, wasted with fever in the siege, and her mind was wandering. She lay on the ground in her Scottish plaid, and I took her head on my knee. When my father comes hame frae the plug, she said, "Oh, please then waken me." She slept like a child on her father's floor, in the flecking of woodbine shade, when the house dog sprawls by the open door, and the mother's wheel is stayed. It was smoke and roar and powder stench, and hopeless waiting for death. But the soldier's wife, like a full-tired child, seemed scarce to draw her breath. I sank to sleep, and I had my dream of an English village lane, and wall and garden. A sudden scream brought me back to the roar again. Then Jessie Brown stood listening, and then a broad gladness broke all over her face, and she took my hand. and drew me near and spoke. The Highlanders, oh, dinna ye hear? The slogan far awa'. The McGregors, I ken it weel. It's the grandest o' them a'. God bless thee, bonny Highlanders. We're saved, she cried, and fell on her knees, and thanks to God, poured forth like a full flood tide. Along the battery line her cry had fallen among the men, and they started, for they were there to die. Was life so near them then? They listened for life, and the rattling fire, far oft in the far-off roar, were all, and the colonel shook his head, and they turned to their guns once more. Then Jessie said, that slogan's doon. But can ye no hear them noo? The Campbells are common, it's no a dream. Our succours hae broken through. We heard the roar and the rattle afar, but the pipes we could not hear. So the men plied their work of hopeless war, and knew that the end was near. It was not long ere it must be heard, a shrilling, ceaseless sound. It was no noise of the strife afar, or the sappers underground. It was the pipes of the Highlanders, and now they played Auld Lang Syne. It came to our men like the voice of God, and they shouted along the line, and they wept and shook one another's hands, and the women sobbed in a crowd, and every one knelt down where we stood, and we all thanked God aloud. That happy day when we welcomed them, our men put Jessie first, and the general took her hand, and cheers from the men like a volley burst, and the pipers' ribbons and tartans streamed, marching round and round our line, and our joyful cheers were broken with tears, for the pipes played Auld Lang Syne, a ballad of war. Bymennella Butte Smedly. By permission of Messrs. Isbister and Co. Oh, were you at war in the red eastern land? What did you hear and what did you see? Saw you my son with his sword in his hand? Sent he by you any dear word to me? I come from red war in that dire eastern land. 3 deeds saw I done, one might well die to see. But I know not your son with his sword in his hand. If you would hear of him, paint him to me. Oh, he is as gentle as south winds in May. 'Tis not a gentle place where I have been. Oh, he has a smile like the outbreak of day. Where men are dying fast, smiles are not seen. Tell me the mightiest deeds that were done. Deeds of chief honor, you said you saw 3. You said you saw 3, I am sure he did 1. My heart shall discern him and cry, this is he. I saw a man scaling a tower of despair, and he went up alone, and the hosts shouted loud. That was my son. Had he streams of fair hair? Nay, it was black as the blackest night cloud. Did he live? No, he died, but the fortress was won. And they said it was grand for a man to die so. Alas for his mother, he was not my son. Was there no fair-haired soldier who humbled the foe? I saw a man charging in front of his rank, 30 yards on, in a hurry to die. Straight as an arrow hurled into the flank of a huge desert beast, ere the hunter draws nigh. Did he live? No, he died, but the battle was won, and the conquest cry carried his name through the air. Be comforted, mother, he was not thy son. Worn was his forehead, and grey was his hair. Oh, the brow of my son is as smooth as a rose. I kissed it last night in my dream. I have heard 2 legends of fame from the land of our foes. But you said there were 3, you must tell me the 3rd. I saw a man flash from the trenches and fly in a battery's face, but it was not to slay. A poor little drummer had dropped down to die, with his ankle shot through in the place where he lay. He carried the boy like a babe through the rain. the death-pouring torrent of grape shot and shell. And he walked at a foot's pace because of the pain, laid his burden down gently, smiled once and then fell. Did he live? No, he died, but he rescued the boy. Such a death is more noble than life, so they said. He had streams of fair hair, and a face full of joy. And his name, speak it not, 'tis my son, he is dead. Oh, dig him a grave by the red rowan tree, where the spring moss grows softer than fringes of foam, and lay his bed smoothly, and leave room for me. For I shall be ready before he comes home, and carve on his tombstone a name and a wreath, and a tale to touch hearts through the slow-spreading years. How he died his noble and beautiful death, and his mother who longed for him, died of her tears. But what is this face shining in at the door, with its old smile of peace, and its flow of fair hair? Are you come, blessed ghost, from the far heavenly shore? Do not go back alone, let me follow you there. Oh, clasp me, dear mother, I come to remain. I come to your heart, and God answers your prayer. Your son is alive from the hosts of the slain, and the cross of our Queen on his breast glitters fair. The ALMA. September 20, 1854. B.Y. Richard Chnevix Trench. Though till now ungraced in story, scant although thy waters be, Alma, roll those waters proudly, proudly roll them to the sea. Yesterday unnamed, unhonored, but to wandering Tartar known. Now thou art a voice forever, to the world's four corners blown. In two nations' annals graven, thou art now a deathless name, and a star forever shining in the firmament of fame. Many a great and ancient river, crowned with city, tower and shrine, little streamlet knows no magic, boasts no potency like thine. Cannot shed the light thou sheddest around many a living head, cannot lend the light thou lendest to the memories of the dead. Yea, nor all unsoothed their sorrow, who can proudly mourning say, when the first strong burst of anguish shall have wept itself away. He has passed from us, the loved one, but he sleeps with them that died by the Alma at the winning of that terrible hillside. Yes, and in the days far onward, when we all are cold as those who beneath thy vines and willows on their hero beds repose, thou on England's banners blazoned with the famous fields of old, shalt where other fields are winning, wave above the brave and bold, and our sons unborn shall nerve them for some great deed to be done, by that 20th of September, when the Alma's heights were won. O thou river, dear for ever to the gallant, to the free, Alma, roll thy waters proudly, proudly roll them to the sea. After ALMA. September 20, 1854. By Gerald Masscy. Our old war banners on the wind were waving merrily o'er them, the hope of half the world behind, the sullen foe before them. They trod their march of battle bold, as death-devoted freemen, like those 300 Greeks of old, or Rome's immortal 3 men. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow, but oh, for such an hour with thee, who would not die tomorrow. With towering heart and lightsome feet, they went to their high places. The fiery valor at white heat was kindled in their faces, magnificent in battle robe, and radiant as from star lands. That spirit shone which girds our globe, with glory as with garlands. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow, but oh, for such an hour with thee, who would not die tomorrow. They saw the angel iris o'er their deluge of grim fire, and with their life's last tide they bore the arc of freedom higher, and grander 'tis aye the dash of death, to ride on battle's billows, when victory's kisses take the breath. then sink on balmiest pillows. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? Brave hearts with noble feelings flushed, in valor's ruddy riot. But yesterday how are ye hushed? Beneath the smile of quiet. For us they poured their blood like wine, from life's ripe gathered clusters, and far through history's night shall shine their deeds with starriest lustres. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? We laid them not in churchyard home, beneath our darling daisies, where to their grave mounds love might come, and sit and sing their praises. But sootly sweet shall be their rest, where victory's hands have crowned them, to earth our mother's bosom pressed, and heaven's arms around them. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? Yes, there they lie 'neath Alma's sod, on pillows dark and gory, as brave a host as ever trod old England's path to glory, with head to home and face to sky, and feet the tyrant spurning. So grand they look, so proud they lie. We weep for glorious yearning. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? They in life's outer circle sleep, as each in death stood sentry, and like our England's dead still keep their watch for kin and country. Up Alma in their red footfalls comes freedom's dawn victorious. Such graves are courts to festal halls, they banquet with the glorious. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? Our chiefs who matched the men of yore, and bore our shield's great burden, the nameless heroes of the poor, they all shall have their guerdon. In silent eloquence each life the earth holds up to heaven, and Britain gives for child and wife, as those brave hearts have given. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? The spirits of our fathers still stand up in battle by us, and in our need on Alma Hill the Lord of hosts was nigh us. Let joy or sorrow brim our cup, 'tis an exultant story, how England's chosen ones went up red Alma's hill to glory. Ah, victory, joyful victory! Like love thou bringest sorrow. But oh, for such an hour with thee! Who would not die tomorrow? Balaclava. October 25, 1854, The Charge of the Light Brigade. By Lord Tnnyson. Half a league, half a league. Half a league onward. All in the valley of deaths. Rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade. Charge for the guns, he said. Into the valley of deaths. Rode the 600. Forward the Light Brigade. Was there a man dismayed? Not though the soldier knew someone had blundered. Theirs not to make reply, theirs not to reason why, theirs but to do and die. Into the valley of deaths rode the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them. volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. Boldly they rode and well, into the jaws of death, into the mouth of hell. Rode the 600, flashed all their sabres bare, flashed as they turned in air, sabring the gunners there, charging an army while all the world wondered, plunged in the battery smoke. Right through the line they broke, Cossack and Russian reeled from the sabre stroke, shattered and sundered. Then they rode back, but not the 600. Cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon behind them, volleyed and thundered, stormed at with shot and shell. While horse and hero fell, they that had fought so well came through the jaws of death, back from the mouth of hell. All that was left of them, left of 600. When can their glory fade? Oh, the wild charge they made! All the world wondered. Honour the charge they made. Honour the light brigade. Noble 600. After Balaclava. By James Williams. The fierce wild charge was over, back to old England's shore were born her gallant troopers, who ne'er would battle more. In hospital at Chatham, by Medway's banks they lay, dragoon, hussar and lancer, survivors of the fray. One day there came a message, 'twas like a golden ray. Victoria, Britain's noble queen, will visit you today. It lighted up each visage, it acted like a spell on Britain's wounded heroes, who'd fought for her so well. One soldier lay among them, fast fading was his life. A lancer from the border, from the good old county Fife. Already was death's icy grasp upon his honest brow, when through the ward was passed the word, the Queen is coming. Now, the dying Scottish laddie, with hand raised to his head, saluted Britain's sovereign, and with an effort said, "And may it please your majesty, I'm new aboot to dee. I'd like to rest mither, beneath the old raw tree. But weel I ken, your majesty, it canna mauna be. Yet God be thanked, I might hae slept ithers o'er the sea, neath Balaclava's crimsoned sward, where many a comrade fell. But now I'll rest on Medway's bank, in sound of Christian bell." She held a bouquet in her hand, and from it then she chose, for the dying soldier laddie, a lovely snow-white rose. And when the lad they buried, clasped in his hand, was seen the simple little snowy flower, the gift of Britain's queen. In Kermond, November 5, 1854. By Gerald Masscy. 'Twas midnight ere our guns' loud laugh at their wild work did cease, and by the smouldering fires of war we lit the pipe of peace. At 4 a burst of bells went up through night's cathedral dark. It seemed so like our Sabbath chimes, we could but wake and hark. So like the bells that call to prayer in the dear land far away. Their music floated on the air and kissed us to betray. Our camp lay on the rainy hill, all silent as a cloud. Its very heart of life stood still, the mist that brought its shroud. For death was walking in the dark, and smiled his smile to see how all was ranged and ready for a sumptuous jubilee. Oh, wily are the Russians, and they came up through the murk, their feet all shod for silence in the best blood of the Turk, while in its banks our fiery tide of war serenely slept. Their subtle serpentry unrolled, and up the hillside crept. In the ruins of the valley do the birds of carnage stir. A creaking in the gloom like wheels, feet trample bullets were. By God, the foe is on us, now the bugles with a start thrill like the cry of a wronged queen, to the red roots of the heart. And long and loud the wild war drums with throbbing triumph roll. a sound to set the blood on fire and warm the shivering soul. The war-worn and the weary leaped up ready, fresh and true. No weak blood curdled white-eye the face, no valor turned to death. Majestic as a god defied, arose our little host. All for the peak of peril pushed, each for the fieriest post. Thorough mist and thorough mire, and o'er the hill brow scowling. Grim as is the frown of slaughter when he dreams his dreadful dream. No sun but none is needed, men can feel their way to fight. The lust of battle in their face, eyes filled with fiery light. And long ere dawn was red in heaven, upon the dark earth lay the prophesying morning red of a great and glorious day. As bridegroom leaves his wedded bride in gentle slumber sealed, our England slumbered in the west when her warriors went afield. We thought of her and swore that day to strike immortal blows, as all along our leaguered line the roar of battle rose. Her banners waved like blessing hands, and we felt it was the hour for a glorious grip till fingers met in the throat of Russian power. And at a bound, and with a sound that madly cried to kill, the lion of old England leapt in lightnings from the hill. And there he stood superb, through all that Sabbath of the sword. And there he slew with a terrible scorn his hunters, horde on horde. All hell seemed bursting on us, as the yelling legions came. The cannon's tongues of quick red fire licked all the hills aflame. Mad whistling shell, wild sneering shot, with devilish glee went past, like fiendish feet and laughter hurrying down the battle blast. And through the air and round the hills there ran a wrack sublime, as though eternity were crashing on the shores of time. On bayonets and swords the smile of conscious victory shone, as down to death we dashed the rebels plucking at our throne. On they came with face of flame, and storm of shot and shell. Up like heaven's sealers, and we hurled them back to hell. Like the old sea, white-lipped with rage, they dash and foam despair. On ranks of rock, what a prize for the wrecker death was there. But as Tweer River Pleasance did our fellows take that flood, a royal throbbing in the pulse that beat voluptuous blood. The guards went down to the fight in grey that's growing gory red. See, save them, they're surrounded, leap your ramparts of the dead. And back the desperate battle, for there is but one short stride. Between the Russ and victory, one more tug you true and tried. The redcaps crest the hill, with bloody spur ride Basque ride. Down like a flood from Etna, foams their valour's burning tide. Now God for merry England cry, hurrah for France the grand. We charge the foe together, all abreast and hand to hand. He caught a shadowy glimpse across the smoke of Ulma's fray, of the destroying angel that shall blast his strength today. We shout and charge together, and again, our plunging battle tears its path, and paves it with the slain. Hurrah, the mighty host doth melt before our fervent heat. Against our side, its breaking heart doth faint and fainter beat. And oh, but 'tis a gallant show, and a merry march as thus we sound into the glorious goal with shouts victorious. From morn till night we fought our fight, and at the set of sun stood conquerors on Inkerman, our soldiers battle won. That morn their legions stood like corn in its pomp of golden grain. That night the ruddy sheaves were reaped upon the misty plain. We cut them down by thunderstrokes, and piled the shocks of slain. The hillside like a vintage ran, and reeled death's harvest wain. We had hungry hundreds gone to sup in paradise that night, and robes of immortality our ragged braves bedight. They fell in boyhood's comely bloom, and bravery's lusty pride. But they made their bed the foemen dead, ere they lay down and died. We gathered round the tent fire in the evening cold and grey, and thought of those who ranked with us in battle's rough array, our comrades of the morn who came no more from that fell fray. The salt tears wrung out in the gloom of green dells far away, the eyes of lurking death that in life's crimson bubbles play. the stern white faces of the dead that on the dark ground lay, like statues of old heroes, cut in precious human clay. Some with a smile as life had stopped to music proudly gay. The household gods of many a heart all dark and dumb today. And hard hot eyes grew ripe for tears, and hearts sank down to pray. From alien lands and dungeon grates, how eyes will strain to mark this waving sword of freedom burn and beckon through the dark. The martyrs stir in their red graves, the rusted armor rings. Adown the long aisles of the dead, where lie the warrior kings. To the proud mother England came the radiant victory, with laurels red and a bitter cup like some last agony. She took the cup, she drank it up, she raised her laureled brow. Her sorrow seemed like solemn joy, she looked so noble now. The dim divine of distance died, the purpled past grew wan, as came that crowning glory o'er the heights of Inkerman. Killed in action. Byfharald Williams. For him no words, the best were only weak, and could not say what love desires to speak. For him no praise, no prizes did he ask. To serve his queen was a sufficient task. For him no show, no idle tears be shed. No fading laurels on that lowly head. He fought for England, and for her he fell, and did his duty then, and it is well. He deemed it but a little act to give his life and all, if freedom thus might live. And though he found the shock of battle rough, he might not flinch, the glory was enough. What if he broke who would not tamely bend? He strove for us and craved no other end. Nor should we ring too long his dying knell. He has a soldier's crown, and it is well. For him the tomb that is a nation's heart, and doth endure when crumbling stones depart. To him the honor like the brave to stand, with those who were in danger our right hand. For him no empty epitaph of dust, but that he kept for England safe her trust. He is not dead, but over war's loud swell heard he his captain's call, and it is well. Ate he the breach. By Sarah Williams. All over for me. The struggle and possible glory, all swept past. In the rush of my own brigade, will charges instead, and fills up my place in the story. Well, 'tis well. By the merry old games we played, there's a fellow asleep the lout, in the shade of the hillock. Yonder. What a dog it must be to drowse in the midst of a time like this. Why the horses might neigh contempt at him, what is he like, I wonder. If the smoke would but clear away, I have strength in me yet to hiss. Will, comrade and friend, we parted in hurry of battle. All I heard was your sonorous up my men, soon conquering peons, shall cover the cannonade's rattle. Then home bells. Will you think of me sometimes then? How that rascal enjoys his snooze, would he wake to the touch of powder? A réveil of broken bones, or a prick of a sword might do. High man, the general wants you, if I could but for once call louder. There is something infectious here, for my eyelids are dropping too. Will, can you recall the time we were lost on the bright down, coming home late in the day, as Susie was kneeling to pray, little blue eyes and white nightgown, saying, Our Father who art. Art what? So she stayed with a start. In heaven, your mother said softly, and Susie sighed, so far away. 'Tis nearer, Will, now to us all. It is strange how that fellow sleeps, stranger still that his sleep should haunt me. If I could but command his face, to make sure of the lesser ill, I will crawl to his side and see, for what should there be to daunt me? What there, Holy Father in heaven, not Will. Will's dead, Will. Lying here I could not feel you. Will, brave Will. Oh, alas for the noble end. Will, dear Will. Since no love nor remorse could heal you. Will, good Will. Let me die on your breast, old friend. Saintafilomena. Florence Nightingale. By H. W. Longfellow. It was the practice of Florence Nightingale to pay a last visit to the wards of the military hospital in the Crimea after the doctors and the other nurses had retired for the night. Bearing a light in her hand, she passed from bed to bed and from ward to ward until she became known as the Lady with the Lamp. Whene'er a noble deed is wrought, whene'er is spoken a noble thought, our hearts in glad surprise to higher levels rise. The tidal wave of deeper souls into our inmost being rolls and lifts us unawares out of all meaner cares. Honor to those whose words or deeds thus help us in our daily needs, and by their overflow raise us from what is low. Thus thought I as by night I read of the great army of the dead, the trenches cold and damp, the starved and frozen camp, the wounded from the battle plain, in dreary hospitals of pain, the cheerless corridors, the cold and stony floors. Lo, in that house of misery, a lady with a lamp I see, pass through the glimmering gloom, and flit from room to room, and slow as in a dream of bliss, the speechless sufferer turns to kiss her shadow as it falls upon the darkening walls, as if a door in heaven should be opened and then closed suddenly. The vision came and went, the light shone and was spent on England's annals through the long hereafter of her speech and song. That light its rays shall cast from portals of the past. A lady with a lamp shall stand in the great history of the land, a noble type of good, heroic womanhood. Nor even shall be wanting here the palm, the lily and the spear, the symbols that of yore St. Philomena bore, the little hatchet story, with occasional questions by a 5-year-old hearer. Byburdtt. Mrs. Carruthers had left her infant prodigy, Clarence, in our care for a little while that she might not be distracted by his innocent prattle while selecting the material for a new gown. He was a bright, intelligent boy of 5 summers, with a commendable thirst for knowledge and a praiseworthy desire to understand what was said to him. We had described many deep and mysterious things to him, and to escape the possibility of still more puzzling questions, offered to tell him a story, the story of George Washington and his little hatchet. After a few necessary preliminaries we proceeded. Well, one day George's father— George who? Asked Clarence. George Washington. He was a little boy then, just like you. One day his father— Whose father? Demanded Clarence with an encouraging expression of interest. George Washington's, this great man we are telling you of. One day George Washington's father gave him a little hatchet for a— Gave who a little hatchet? The dear child interrupted with a gleam of bewitching intelligence. Most men would have got mad or betrayed signs of impatience, but we didn't. We know how to talk to children, so we went on. George Washington. Who gave him the little hatchet? His father, and his father. Whose father? George Washington's. Oh. Yes, George Washington's, and his father told him. Told who? Told George. Oh yes, George. And we went on, just as patient and as pleasant as you could imagine. We took up the story right where the boy interrupted, for we could see he was just crazy to hear the end of it. We said, And he was told. George told him, queried Clarence. No, his father told George. Oh, yes, told him he must be careful with the hatchet. Who must be careful? George must. Oh, yes, must be careful with his hatchet. What hatchet? Why, George's. Oh, careful with the hatchet and not cut himself with it, or drop it in the cistern, or leave it out of doors all night. So George went around cutting everything he could reach with his hatchet. At last he came to a splendid apple tree, his father's favorite apple tree, and cut it down. Who cut it down? George did. Oh, but his father came home and saw it the first thing and saw the hatchet. No, saw the apple tree, and he said, Who has cut down my favorite apple tree? What apple tree? George's father's, and everybody said they didn't know anything about it and… Anything about what? The apple tree. Oh, and George came up and heard them talking about it. Heard who talking about it? Heard his father and the men. What were they talking about? About the apple tree. What apple tree? The favorite tree that George had cut down. George who? George Washington. Oh. So George came up and heard them talking about it, and he… What did he cut it down for? Just to try his little hatchet. Whose little hatchet? Why, his own, the one his father gave him. Gave whose? Why, George Washington. Oh. So George came up and he said, Father, I cannot tell a lie. Who couldn't tell a lie? George couldn't. Oh, George, oh yes. It was I who cut down your apple tree, I did. His father did. No, it was George said this. Said he cut his father. No, said he cut down his apple tree. George's apple tree. No, his father's. Oh. He said. His father said. No, George said, Father, I cannot tell a lie, I did it with my little hatchet. And his father said, Noble boy, I would rather lose 1,000 apple trees than have you tell a lie. George did. No, his father said that. Said he'd rather have 1,000 apple trees. No, said he'd rather lose 1,000 apple trees than. Said he'd rather George would. No, said he'd rather he would than have him lie. Oh, George would rather have his father lie. We are patient and we love children, but if Mrs. Carruthers hadn't come and got her prodigy at that critical juncture, we don't believe all Burlington could have pulled us out of the snarl. And as Clarence Alenson de Marquimont Carruthers pattered down the stairs, we heard him telling his ma about a boy who had a father named George, and he told him to cut down an apple tree, and he said he'd rather tell 1,000 lies than cut down one apple tree. The Loss of the Birkenhead. February 25, 1852. Sir Francis Hastings, Doyle. The Birkenhead was lost off the coast of Africa by striking on a hidden rock, when the soldiers on board sacrificed themselves, in order that the boats might be left free for the women and children. Right on our flank the sun was dropping down. The deep sea heaved around in bright repose. When, like the wild shriek from some captured town, a cry of women rose. The stout ship Birkenhead lay hard and fast, caught without hope upon a hidden rock. Her timbers thrilled as nerves when through them passed the spirit of that shock. And ever like base cowards who leave their ranks in danger's hour before the rush of steel, drifted away disorderly the planks from underneath her keel. So calm the air, so calm and still the flood, that low down in its blue translucent glass We saw the great fierce fish, that thirst for blood, pass slowly then repass. They tarried, the waves tarried for their prey. The sea turned one clear smile, like things asleep. Those dark shapes in the azure silence lay, as quiet as the deep. Then amidst oath and prayer and rush and wreck, faint screams, faint questions waiting no reply, our colonel gave the word, and on the deck formed us in line to die. To die, 'twas hard while the sleek ocean glowed beneath a sky as fair as summer flowers. All to the boats, cried one, he was, thank God, no officer of ours. Our English hearts beat true, we would not stir. That base appeal we heard, but heeded not. On land, on sea, we had our colours, sir, to keep without a spot. They shall not say in England that we fought with shameful strength, unhonoured life to seek, into mean safety, mean deserters brought by trampling down the weak. So we made the women with their children go, the oars ply back again, and yet again, whilst inch by inch the drowning ship sank low, still under steadfast men. What follows, why recall the brave who died without flinching in the bloody surf. They sleep as well beneath that purple tide as others under turf. They sleep as well, and roused from their wild grave, wearing their wounds like stars, shall rise again, joint heirs with Christ, because they bled to save his weak ones not in vain. If that day's work no clasp or medal mark, if each proud heart no cross of bronze may press, nor cannon thunder loud from tower or park, this feel we none the less, that those whom God's high grace there saved from ill, those also left his martyrs in the bay, though not by siege, though not in battle still, full well had earned their pay. Elihu. By Alice Carey. O sailor, tell me true, is my little lad, my Elihu, a sailing in your ship? The sailor's eyes were dimmed with dew. Your little lad, your Elihu, he said with trembling lip. What little lad, what ship? What little lad, as if there could be another such a one as he? What little lad do you say? Why, Elihu that took to the sea the moment I put him off my knee. It was just the other day. The grey swan sailed away. The other day the sailor's eyes stood wide open with surprise. The other day the swan, his heart began in his throat to rise. Aye, sir, here in the cupboard lies the jacket he had on. And so your lad is gone. Gone with the swan, and did she stand with her anchor clutching hold of the sand for a month and never stir? Why, to be sure, I've seen from the land, like a lover kissing his lady's hand, the wild sea kissing her, a sight to remember, sir. But my good mother, do you know, all this was 20 years ago. I stood on the grey swan's deck, and to that lad I saw you throw, taking it off as it might be so, the kerchief from your neck. Aye, and he'll bring it back. And did the little lawless lad, that has made you sick and made you sad, sail with the grey swan's crew? Lawless, the man is going mad, the best boy ever mother had.